Hello again, sports fans. This is the latest test of my modified Quantum Overlord. I've realigned three of the patch antennas so that they overlap and hopefully give me a much wider beam in the direction in which I'm travelling. It cuts down on the all-round coverage, but it doesn't seem to have made that much difference for the enclosed stuff so far. In addition, for this flight I've reduced the diversity switching level from 5% down to 3% to see if that makes any difference. Once again, I'll be using the Texumo for this flight, and I'll be flying the same course as I flew yesterday, and the goal will be to do better than the 7.5 kilometers I achieved. The launch goes very well, and I gain some altitude and do a couple of quick circuits of the field just to test the autopilot return to home mode, and everything checks out okay. So I'm heading mainly south down the river valley to the left of the mountain, and I'm about 1 kilometre out at 300 metres and still climbing gradually, probably planning on stopping at about 400 depending on how the video reception goes. So I'm just coming up on 2 kilometres out. I'm at 250 metres and just at cruising speed. The video is pretty good. I'm getting the occasional brief dropout, which might be associated with changing the diversity switching levels from 5 down to 3, but I'm not real sure. Coming up on 3 kilometres, everything's still pretty good, still the occasional brief dropout. Now I've increased the throttle a bit just to get some more altitude on. So just coming up on 4 kilometres now, I'm at 350 metres, and I was starting to get some video breakup at this distance yesterday, so it's looking pretty good so far. I didn't notice at the time, but I haven't pulled back on the throttle, so I'm still climbing gradually and using more battery than I really want to, of course. So just coming up on 5 kilometres, I'm up at 500 metres because I still haven't realised I've got climbing throttle on. But the video has been good all the way through here. I finally noticed that I'm up at 500 metres and reduced the throttle back down to cruising speed. Hopefully I haven't burnt too much battery. So as you can see, I'm starting to experience a little bit of signal loss. It's not too bad, it's still quite flyable. But I decide to explore the width of the beam by just banking left and right just to see if I can spot the sweet zone. And it seems to be a little further east of the course that I'm following, so I moved the antenna a little bit more in that direction and settle down again. So I'm coming up on 6 kilometres and the video is still pretty solid. I notice that I'm at 580 metres, so I'm still climbing even though I've reduced the throttle. But I decide not to do anything about it at this stage. I do start to experience a bit of signal loss, and just gently bank left and right to see if I can find the beam again, and I seem to be able to do that without too much trouble, and the picture comes back to a reasonable quality. So I'm pretty pleased with the quality of the video up to this point. It's pretty steady. As I come up to about 7.5 kilometres, I start to get a little bit of signal breakup. I'm up to 650 metres and still climbing despite the cruising throttle, and the signal starts to get worse, so I do some more gentle banking and I'm able to find the beam again and carry on. So coming up on 8 kilometres, the signal starts to degenerate again and gets quite bad. So I start banking again, but it's a bit difficult to see how far I'm banking given the signal loss, but I do eventually manage to find my way back into the beam, even though I'm banking a bit more steeply than I would have liked. When the picture comes back, I can see that I've actually turned back towards home, but the picture's reasonable, so I decided to turn back and see how much further I can get before the video disappears completely. It's not great, but it's certainly good enough to fly by. It starts to get grainy again, and I realise I'm out at about 8.5 kilometres now, and the battery's down near 11 volts, so I decide that that's enough, and I flick the return to home switch. And the video is reasonable when I turn around. So by this time I'm up at 700 metres, and I decide I'll drop down a bit and see how it affects the video. So I line up on our neighbouring flying club's landing strip and put the nose down and head on down. I'd start to lose signal at about 500 metres, so level off and put it back and return to home. So the video quality isn't great, but it's certainly enough to see where I'm going. I could probably improve it by moving over to the right hand side of the valley, but I'm in return to home mode and I'm just quite happy to watch it. So I get to about 7 kilometres and decide to put the throttle back up to cruise speed, and yeah, just watch the video and see how it's being affected by the course home. So when I get to about 6 kilometres, it comes quite good. So I'm still up at about 500 metres, but yeah, the video seems pretty solid from here on in. Round about 4 kilometres out, I start to get a little bit of what I think is interference from a couple of nitro planes that have started up quite close to my base station. But the quality just gets better the closer it comes, so I'm not real concerned. What is of some concern is the battery voltage level, which is down below 10.5 volts, and it usually drops pretty quickly from there, so I need to keep a pretty close eye on it. At about 2.5 kilometres out, the voltage drops down below 10 volts, and I know from experience that usually means it's going to be about a minute before the speedy shuts down. So I drop the throttle to about 1/4 to see if that's going to bring the voltage up, but it doesn't, so I cut the throttle completely to and decide I'll have to glide back the rest of the way. So I dropped the nose a little too much initially, but I get it under control and line up on the strip and yeah, just try and keep a reasonable flying speed up. That fluttering noise you can hear in the background, I think, is a bit of laminate that's come loose from the wing, and it's just flapping in the breeze. So it comes down quite nicely, and the battery recovers enough for me to actually put a little bit of throttle on as I'm coming in, and bring it in for a reasonably safe landing. So all's well that ends well. So I was pretty happy with today's flight. I seemed to have a lot more success flying the plane down the beam rather than moving the antenna around to try and catch the plane. I was at a higher altitude for this flight than yesterday, so that's probably a factor as well, but I'll have to fly out in a different direction away from the mountain to really tell for sure what's going on there. Anyhow, looks like there's plenty more games to be played with this beastie yet, so watch this space.